Hey Zouk family, welcome back, which means it's the best part of my week catching up with my good friend Ron over in Vegas. But this week we have a special guest who's someone I'm very close to out of Malaysia, one of the most successful young entrepreneurs. Forbes 30 under 30, Malaysia's 40 under 40, has a very successful startup career, and the most recent is with a platform called Fabful. But this is definitely not the last that she'll do. Sasha Tan, how are you?
I'm great. So flattered of your introduction.
Well, it's just deserved. So, Sasha, just for the benefit of Ron and Marisa, who are joining us from Vegas, can you give us a very brief overview of your career in technology and startups to date?
Okay, so at the moment, I'm running like a beauty social commerce in Malaysia, where the mission is actually to help people feel more stress-free and more certain in their personal grooming decisions. Before these platforms, I was helping a few startups to build from scratch. For example, Happy Fresh, which now it's already a leading grocery delivery app. I joined them from the very, very beginning. I was like number one team members. So I helped them to build from scratch. And then the startup before was a company by one of the leading t-shirts online manufacturers in US called Custom Ink. So I always really fascinated by this experience of building from 0 to 1, and that has been mostly of how my journey has been.
So let me draw a point that I don't know if the guys in America will be aware, but Malaysia is an incredibly popular space for startups. The startup community in Malaysia is really strong, especially for Southeast Asia. I know a lot of friends who have moved into entrepreneurial space. When you think of GoGet, you think of Grab. Obviously, you look at a lot of these Southeast Asian communities have developed themselves out of Malaysia. Why do you think the community is so strong in this country in relation to others around Southeast Asia?
I find it fascinating for a few points. I'm gonna just talk about my experience in the startup community first. I think what happens like 4 or 5 years ago, it was like a time where like Malaysia is like super aggressive in digitalization, and there were so many verticals for us to innovate on, and there were many like a lot of foreign capitals is coming in, and so there's a lot of innovations. And I think that was the time where the startup community really come together. There were accelerator, there were incubator, and there were WhatsApp group where it's still now still ongoing. So basically that was the time where all the founders come together, and literally we are all a text away from each other. So that really helped shape kind of like the community where if I'm a text away from each other, of course whenever we think about promotions, whenever we think about collaborations, we are always really, it's like a lower barrier of entries to actually make something happen. But the funny thing is, when you say that it's a really good place for startups, ironically I find that a lot of startups that has either they have became really successful in Malaysia, or they are going to be successful. They are all becoming Singaporean company.
That must be for a tax benefit, I guess. But my point was more that there is a community here. I mean, if you look at the co-working spaces, there's a hell of a lot of entrepreneurs that are turning, I would say that a lot of millennials are turning their backs on careers with the big companies, the Maxis, the Petronas, to try and start on their own. And perhaps because it's quite cost effective in Malaysia, because labor is quite cheap. One thing I discovered recently is there's a big computer game production industry in Malaysia, because you can find programmers and developers very cheaply here in relation to doing it in the West. So there's definitely a startup community. One that you're prospering in very well, I must add. So your platform specifically, why did you choose to get into this platform? And what was it that made you realize, and very successfully, that there was a huge window for Fabful and what it does?
I wanted to start this because I was like, personally, it's an industry really close to my heart. I was, when I was in like my teenager time, I always felt like, a lot of my self-grooming problems are really kind of like my own problem, and I feel really isolated by all this problem. People are feeling ashamed to talk about the hairs growing out of places that shouldn't have been, or like you have new pimples or things like that. Like just a lot of grooming new issues that's coming, and I feel like this really affected my self-confidence for some point. And not until like I kind of like gained friends who taught me who just really open up on all this self-grooming topics that felt more like a stigma back then. And it really made me feel so enlightened and so supported. I feel like this is something that I should do for more people like me. That's why I wanted to build a platform that actually just really openly discuss about personal grooming, be it the solutions, be it the product, be it their recommendations, and what they really kind of like warn you about. And yeah.
There's an interesting point you make there. It's a very candid point, and I think there's a lot of people who will enjoy using the platform, especially if they have insecurities and they're on their own. I think for females, looking at the grooming line, Ronn is probably one of the best groomed men I've ever met in my entire life. The guy looks like he fell out of a catalog every time I see him. Ronn, you must have seen
a difference. You're too nice.
Ronn, you must have seen a difference in Vegas between the days of guys wearing t-shirts and jeans to go clubbing to now people buying silk shirts, getting their hair groomed, getting their eyebrows done. I mean, we met a very good friend of yours who was the #1 barber in Vegas, and he was talking about people getting eyebrows plucked. That's the thing that I don't know guys would have done 10 years ago. Do you see a huge interest in this space, and obviously a highly profitable space now, that it's become socially acceptable for men to groom?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ritual, it's like the grooming, the taking care of, the kind of almost like rejuvenation routines have become a huge part, where years ago it would have been a knock on your kind of masculinity to do these things. And now it's routine, it's daily routine. When we spoke to Sosa, and I had a chance to check out the platform, and I got to see some of the different topics that you touch on, and it's very meaningful because at points you're looking for answers, and again, having that resource that kind of talks through that, and talking through kind of growing up and being in that kind of teenager adolescence years where sometimes there's the confidence perspective in it, and I see that even with executives in Las Vegas, executives that even a few years ago probably weren't as health conscious are now health conscious, but you're actually seeing a heightened level of confidence as they're taking care of themselves. It's a little bit of a different swagger when they walk in with that fresh haircut, the eyebrows done, they got the black face mask, and again, it's become more of a routine now, where before it was almost looked upon as, man, I can't believe you do that as a guy, and now it's almost like you'll walk in and say this, and 5 guys are going to want to know where you went, or who you went and saw, or what you got done. So it's crazy how quick the social acceptable nature of it has changed.
Yeah, I think it's very true. I think the fact that we have apps like Instagram where people tend to post pictures of themselves more frequently than they would have done in the past, people are very conscious about the way they look. Sasha, what do you think the #1 or 2 touch points for your app that are the biggest area of focus for girls when they use the platform? What are the areas that it's most useful for them? I remember you describing to me before that not all skin tones are the same. So maybe people were getting the wrong color blusher or getting the wrong color makeup that didn't suit their skin type. On top of that, there must be a trillion allergies that come from using the wrong kind of makeup, etc. So what are the main factors that people use Fabful for?
Yeah, so when we talk about beauty, I think it's a very sentimental industry, and it's also really personalized. You might not have the same skin type as me, as you probably also have different concerns like eczema or things like that, as compared to me. So the things that we're doing differently is that we don't just put put up products out there for you to kind of like just buy. But we really categorize all the products. We also categorize all the recommendations from people who has like similar properties as you. For example, you are dry skinned and you can see someone's comment in this way, like you can see they are dry skin, and we also categorize purchase behavior. So for example, you are savvy researcher and I'm budget buyer. So whatever that you buy probably is not something that I would buy because I'm budget buyer. So a lot of the times, these kind of things also affect how you perceive a product. And so basically we kind of like just mine all this data and like present it in a way that you understand that who you can relate to and what product can you trust by, recommended by who you can trust. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a touch point I want to expand on. How important is consumer reviews in your industry? Because for instance, I just bought 5 books on Amazon. It's like I love it. I will buy books all the time, but I would genuinely go to the reviews to see if people have gained a positive experience from purchasing this book. I don't trust the bio and I won't trust the testimonials, but I'll go to see if someone says, yeah, this book on coaching was great because the various aspects I took from it and I used in my life are A, B, or C, or this is very long-winded, or the descriptions are too dense, or it's boring, or so I find that for me, I'm influenced by reviews. And I'll only go for an item that has over 200 or 300 reviews, because if there's 6 or 7, I worry it might be people inside the company posting ghost reviews. So how important in your industry is consumer feedback?
In short, I think it's extremely important because what you were talking about, it's a book. So it's not something that you put on your face if you're not going to your eyes and things like that. But for beauty industry, it's like extremely important because that's the only thing that you can judge from if you are buying online. And as the consumer have access to, even wider range of information, even more choices than ever before, it kind of like put a greater emphasis on, all this like reviews and recommendations, because it's just a sea full of products. You don't know where to start, and especially you don't know what is safe and what is good for you. So all these reviews become your guidelines. Like you understand that this person has tried before and it's something that you don't need to try again to actually trust it.
I found that even on Amazon, there are such thing as verified reviewers, and there will be people who will follow a certain reviewer to see what they bought next, because they obviously feel that there's such a connection with this stranger that you've never met. But their reviews, let's say I give 5 stars to 2 products that you purchase, you might say, hey, Joe and I have the same mentality, therefore I'll follow his recommendations. I find that fascinating that we are ending up taking, back in the day, I felt, and I'll ask Ronn about this, when it came to his early marketing days, we would use celebrities to endorse products because people wanted to be like that celebrity. Therefore, they said, hey, Michael Jordan wears Nike, I'm going to wear Nike. But now people are following recommendations of people they trust more so than who they think is cool. What do you think, Ronn?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like, again, even if there's a paid component behind the influence position, it feels like people at least gravitate to it. Because when you look at the aspirational side of it, there's at least an aspirational ability in your mind to be that person, where maybe you'll never get to be Michael Jordan, right? But the girl who dresses cool, that you like her style, that you like the way she's talking about her makeup routine, that's someone that you're going to try to emulate. There's aspiration in that sense. Joe, was funny, I never told you this story, but when in the States, when Yelp started being a real thing on the clubs, we never took it serious until we got a really, really negative review that made the hotel make us take it serious. On the club side, we kind of looked at, that was a restaurant platform. And then I remember we got this just crushing review where the guy just wrote like a novel of how negative the experience was. And we always cared about guest experience, but we never looked at the reviews as kind of a thing. And then that happened. And then it was, I remember it going all the way up to the top at Wynn, and it was really an issue. And then obviously since then, we then went over the top, and then we started doing events with Yelp and trying to go after this kind of core group of like I forget what the name was, but it was essentially like experts that were reviewing things, and we essentially would bring them in. But that became such a big thing, and it still is. You know, when someone's looking at clubs, even in Las Vegas now, they're looking to see what kind of stars do they have, how did their star rating or review rating compare to other clubs. So it's definitely, again, it's one of those switch points over the last decade.
It's a very tricky point because it's merely an opinion, right? And it could be spurned by anything, but sadly people do take it seriously. And as the saying goes in service, if you have a good experience, you may tell one person. If you have a bad experience, you'll for sure tell 10 people. And so the negative review is 10 times worse than the positive review. But moving back into positives, you must have got a lot of people who have immensely appreciative responses to Fabful because you are saving them from making fatal errors of going out. And I know that makeup's not inexpensive. It's an expensive thing to purchase. I mean, I always get gobsmacked when I hear that lipsticks can cost $50. I mean, to me, that's lunacy, but then I don't use it. Or maybe I should use it, I don't know. But you look at this and I'm sure it's a huge appreciation point that people will go out and purchase it with the pre-knowledge of knowing that it won't affect their skin type, it won't affect their psoriasis, it won't upset their skin texture. So there must be a huge amount of appreciation for that kind of platform you've created, and you must get a feel-good factor from that.
Yes, knowing that someone else who used to be like me get guidance and get enlightenment on how to take care of themselves. I think that's a really great thing.
I'll draw in Marisa because I feel Ronn and I are a bit redundant in the form of your platform, although I wouldn't be surprised if Ronn plucks his eyebrows and gets his beard nicely trimmed. I mean, the guy does look like a model. But Marisa, when you go out and you purchase products, how do you know from a layman's perspective what you're going to choose, what you're going to buy, or which direction with your makeup and grooming that you're going to go in?
So for me, I was actually going to ask you this question just because I really don't have a clue when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm really bad at makeup. I'm really bad at like doing my hair and stuff like that. So what's like the best advice that you'd give for someone who doesn't really know much? I mean, for me, I kind of just go into Sephora and I ask the sales ladies to just help me. They kind of ask me like what my skin type is like, but that's pretty much how I choose my products. I just go based off of that. But what's your advice for somebody who doesn't really have much knowledge in that kind of realm?
So basically what I would suggest, usually if you are my friends, which indirectly you are right now, I would just really honestly tell them to go really simple. Like there are a lot of products out there, like one person's skincare routine could be like 10 steps, 15 steps. That is normal. But I would say just try to do it from very, very simple ingredients and very simple routines. Like it could be just 3 steps of cleanser, serum, moisturizer, sunscreen, that's all. And then, choose something that really it's very simple, very natural ingredients. That would be a good place to start. And then the more you get to know yourself, like your skin, how it reacted to certain things, and then you can get more sophisticated after that. But for a lot of people, also, I mean, you're not alone, like so many girls, like we all once are like that, right? So basically what we trying to do in the platform, we actually kind of like want to replicate this journey. So the moment that you're on board, we will actually guide you into understanding your skin type. So by the time you finish onboarding, you already know your skin type. Then, from navigating on the website, you can actually kind of like just knowing your skin type, and then you click on your skin type, seeing all the recommendations based on your skin type, and maybe you can filter down to a product that you're searching, like cleanser. Then you can judge from, whether this person that recommended is someone that you can relate to. Then it's very easy to come down to the decisions of what to buy and what not to buy. So basically, I think really understanding who recommends you is very important. Like I think going to Sephora and asking the salesperson is like a, very normal way to go about it. But I always feel very skeptical. Like, is the person's recommending me that product because they have commissions, or is the person recommending me that product actually, has like different budget than me? Maybe there are like other budget that more suitable for me and things like that. So I kind of like don't trust that much when it's not, like a peers enough.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, especially on that. I feel like a lot of the times they are supposed to promote a certain like brand at the time. So, I mean, sometimes I'll go in there and they'll tell me to get like a certain kind of foundation, but the way that they do it, it's like, I'm assuming that Sephora is making you guys tell me, like, push me towards this brand, not just because of like what I'm actually looking for. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I actually have a friend who does, like you said, 15 different things on her face. And here I am, I wash my face and then I'll put on some moisturizer and like that's about it. I guess I never really looked too deep into it just because I've always had pretty good skin my whole life and my skin never reacts poorly to anything. So I just really have never put much thought into it.
Not you.
I've been lucky.
Sasha, I want to go back a step. I want to ask you, well, you made a decision to move into the startup world. A lot of people would have left university or left school and gone straight into that career ladder of employment, where you go job, you rise the ranks. Arguably, in a way, what Ronn and I have done, which is to go to a big corporation and then channel your way through different roles, basically with the work that's disseminated towards you. It's a very brave thing what you decided to do, and you've obviously been very successful at it. We have a lot of young aspirational graduates that watch this show, both in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, and USA. And Ronn and I always try and pick the brains of the people that talk to us to offer advice. What is your advice when let's say I've got a great idea, I'm at home, I just don't have the confidence to follow it through. What was it that encouraged you to take that huge step and say, I'm going to take my idea and I'm going to make it real?
Okay, I think my answer is going to be a little bit controversial. I would say, don't do it. Because honestly, I have reason behind it. Seriously, because like a lot of the times, like I feel like entrepreneurship is over glorified. But the honest truth is, entrepreneurship, it's like you wake up to either is the top of the world or you wake up to either is the end of the world. So every other day, there are so many unexpected challenges, obstacles, and things that you have to handle. So I really, really like, sometimes I see like, people coming up to me and ask me like, hey, I have this idea, but I don't know what to do with this particular, like, let's say hiring. I don't know where to get tech guys. I don't know how to incorporate my company. All these small things kind of like really affect their self-confidence. And I was very worried whenever they talk to me like that. It's like, wow, Duke, the journey is still so long and this problem is like so small, like, compared to whatever that you're going to face in the future. So I really think that you shouldn't do it unless you can see yourself really sacrificing for this problem that you're trying to solve or these solutions that you are trying to create. Because if you're not okay to sacrifice whatever, like maybe your sleep, your peace, your brain self into actually pushing through these obstacles, you will be suffering every other day, maybe.
I guess what you're saying is there's a huge sense of responsibility. I mean, in essence, and you and I have discussed this at length, that once you raise fundraising, once you have board of directors or various other aspects, you're responsible for not just their money, but their hopes, their investment in all different definitions of the word investment. So there's a lot of pressure. Do you think there's a specific kind of person that shouldn't consider entrepreneurship?
They really like the people that I met who is like really good founders has this confidence that they really think that they can get through anything because they are so like they are set in their mind that this is something that they really want to achieve. Like I must become this. So whatever problem that comes along my way, I will definitely have to or must get through it. And I think this is the key characteristic or mentality for a good entrepreneur. A lot of the times, I think people kind of like mistaken that like their craft so much, they have to make a startup out of their craft. I think that's not that's a very different route altogether.
So I pass this one to Ronn. Ronn's worked for one of my greatest intrigues, but also one of the leading Vegas entrepreneurs in Steve Wynn. Ronn, what kind of characteristics do you think it takes to be a guy at the very top? You've worked with Steve, you know the guy closely. What are the characteristics that you saw that made him build his brand to?
Well, I mean, I would say that it's obviously a similar process. I think it's a lot of similar feelings, right? I don't think the sleepless nights ever end. You know, I think that no matter someone at that point, as you're gaining success, continues to want to grow. And not to say it's never enough, but I think there becomes a point in your career where it's not just solidifying your future and generational futures, it's about making legacy, you know, and that's really what we saw. You know, you saw a man that continued to stride and continued to grow and continue to do amazing things because it was about legacy. You know, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, he wanted to be remembered, especially for his position and his what he had contributed to Las Vegas. So learning under that for over a decade just really taught me that there's always a next level, you know, and there's always these opportunities, there's always sleepless nights, and it never really gets easier. You know, I mean, I remember there was a conversation once of, well, if you want to work a 9-to-5 job, yeah, you'll make 9-to-5 money and you'll have a 9-to-5 life. But if you're really looking to do more, position more, and grow, and build your own thing, then, you know, hauling the foundation in and setting it up is going to be really hard. And then by the time you get to what you think is the top, you're going to decide to build a second floor.
And what do you think his best characteristics were?
I mean, just a true visionary. I mean, he would dream something up and, you know, it would come to fruition. You know, it was obviously, you know, he had so many ideas, you know, even I look at the Le Rev show, and basically with the Le Rev show, his ability to go out and essentially redream it. I mean, it was made by Franco Dragone, and then Mr. Wynn came in and made his own changes and truthfully made the show better. So again, just with everything, a visionary. No matter what he did, he wanted to do it better than anyone else. He wanted to make it essentially a once in a lifetime type of experience that people could experience, and really just with everything, his attention to detail. Like there was, and again, obviously it wasn't that cost didn't matter, but it was more about, I'm going to invest the money to put that experience out there for the customer, and again, just build a legacy in doing so.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think entrepreneurship is now obviously a hot topic because people love to look at motivational comments by Elon Musk, by Warren Buffett, by Jeff Bezos and say, hey, I want to be that guy. But I watched a very interesting video by someone who said it's not shameful not to become Jeff Bezos because Jeff Bezos is 1 in a trillion. So if you want to turn around, there is different levels of success, and we should market our own success at our own capabilities. Not everyone has that opportunity. There's a lot of luck that plays into this. In the startup community, you've been very successful, Sasha, but there's people who don't make it. There's great ideas that fail at the last minute, or it's just ideas that don't work. What is your advice to people who maybe are going through difficult times in their startups, or you consult to a lot of startups? What are the most clear-cut problems that people face that you see are fixable? What is the problems that people bring to you and say, hey, I've got this issue, I need your help?
There are a lot of different kinds of problems. I don't think there's like one same problems for everyone. Like hiring. I think hiring is something that all companies face the same problem. But yeah, I don't think they have the same problems. But it always have this dilemma between do we make money, like make a sustainable business model, or do we actually focus on the top line number? I think this is the most common dilemma for startups. From my point of view, I will always tell them that it really depends on the strategy. There are startups who will focus on actually, fundraising by, really gaining a lot of market share at the short period of time. But there are also companies who really want to make the vision come true, and they want to make sure their unit economic makes sense. To really prove that they are making a difference with this model. So I think this is the most common dilemma for startups, beside hiring, which is a common problem for a lot of startups as well.
I think talent is a very difficult thing for all businesses, full stop. I think understanding the mindset of age groups. My generation, Ronn's generation, went into a good job, and no matter how bad your day was, you just plugged on with the work. I find that millennial workforce are a lot more sensitive to various things, but also a lot more expectant of different hooks. They want the job to be fun. They don't want to be bored. They want flexibility. They want to know that a company is caring for the environment. They want to know that the boss will listen to them and cares about their small problems. If I went to my boss in the beginning of my career 15 years ago and said, I'm having a bad day, he said, did you get your salary? I'd say yes. He said, then what's the problem? So there's a very different mentality over age groups that people identify to. And Marisa, I want to ask you a question. I'm sure he'll blush, but it's okay because he's not on camera. But we perceive Ronn as a very strong leader of people, which I think is really important in any walk of a community. What is it, the skills that you think makes Ronn such a good leader of people?
Communication is definitely number one. He'll even say himself too that he likes to over communicate, so that there's no questions. When he speaks to you, you leave there knowing everything that you need to know. He's also one of the hardest working, actually definitely is the hardest working person that I know. Last one out of the office at all times and going home still working. Work never stops at all. Anybody that ever needs him, he's always there. He'll always help. He'll always stack on projects. I definitely say the communication thing is definitely the strongest and biggest point.
Yeah, it's retaining talent. I mean, I'm sure, Sasha, unless you're a one-man band and you can run a stocks trading platform on your own, we all need people. We all need a community. We all need people to buy into the product that we're trying to create and we're trying to sell. I think one of the things that's fascinated me that I'm most impressed about with what you've achieved is you've managed to find a solution for a question that people are asking. There's a demand for what Fabful does, and it makes people's lives not just easier but better. I think that's a very smart product to go and create, because in that huge marketplace, if a girl has insecurity, so she goes to buy a beauty product to make herself feel prettier, but the beauty product then counterbalances that by upsetting the skin, it's like a horrible vicious cycle. And what you've managed to do is find a way for someone to grow in confidence without going through that horrible hurdle, which may knock them back. Getting the wrong makeup, arguably, from my perspective, might knock their confidence back 10 times than it was before they wore makeup in the first place. So I think it's incredibly smart, and to have the intuition to take that company and go through all the problems that maybe you've faced and all the headaches that startups have to continue is incredibly dynamic. So congratulations on that. And also thank you for chatting to us today. It's a shame that we couldn't see the best groomed man in Las Vegas, but there'll be more time for that for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the time.
I had a good time tonight, Joe. This was a good one.
No, thank you very much. It's great for us. And is there any last pieces of advice you would give to people, as I say, graduates, or even people who are in the second fold of their life? There's a lot of people who are trying to rediscover themselves. COVID has also put a stop to some careers that people have had for 20 years. And the number one question very sadly I had during retrenchments was, Joe, what do I do now? And the answer is you can actually try and do anything now. There is an opportunity in this world through the internet, through technology, to try any idea. I know someone that just set up a grocery store, like a pop-up grocery store, that was doing something totally different. And I also know people who have changed careers because they were never happy in the jobs they had in the first place. That work-life balance wasn't there. So any pieces of advice you would give to people if they've now got this opportunity? I know you said that entrepreneurship is best for certain types of people, and there are other stresses that come with it. But if people have an idea, or they're wondering what to do with themselves, they've just graduated, what would be your advice to these people?
If it's in your mind for more than 3 days, I think you should really just go out there and really try it. And once you try it, then you will understand whether this is something that you're willing to actually sacrifice yourself for. So without you actually trying and understanding what goes behind it, you will not come to the conclusion anyway. So I think really, like you mentioned, this is really the time to do anything at all. And we should really do it.
And my last question is, if people want to find out more about Fabful, or there are people with startups who want to reach out to you to potentially for consultancy or advice, etc., what's the best way to check out Fabful? What's the best way to contact you?
Whoever interested in the platform can go to favful.com, which is favful.com, and I can be reached at sasha@stayfaithful.com.
Well, thanks again, Sasha. We really appreciate your time. Thanks, Marisa and Ronn, for staying up over in Vegas. And I'll definitely be picking your brains for more advice in the future, as I do already. And I hope you have a great weekend over in Malaysia.
You too. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Request say.